Okay. You know, it's always the last 30 seconds before the presentation starts that feel the longest. You have 2 minutes and then you're late. So we're late by 2 minutes. We'll make up for it. Hello, good afternoon. We're going to talk a little bit about the new design system for Experience Builder that we at Media Current are currently working on. First of all, we're trying to make this a little bit of audience participation, so loosen it up a little bit. Introduce myself first. I'm Elliot Maurer. I'm the CEO of Media Current. This is the part where you say your name.
Okay, yeah. What is my name? What is it? Jason Thompson, staff engineer, user experience at Media Current, and I've been doing Drupal since 2016.
So we want to know a little bit about our audience before we get too far into this. So who are our developers in the house? Great, cool. Designers. Strategists. Other. Okay, cool. So as I said, we're here to talk about the Experience Builder design system. Again, audience participation. How familiar are folks generally with the concept of design systems? Iffy? Okay, cool. So in general, a design system is quite simply, it's a set of building blocks and a set of codified standards, a lot of decisions that are made to make products look and feel similar. You're trying to make products feel consistent, on brand, feel like they live in the same house, they belong to the same family. And because I am a history nerd, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of design systems. So the first digital design system was the Yahoo User Interface Library, which actually came out in 2006. And if you are of a certain age, you can close your eyes and you know exactly what this looks like. It looks like Yahoo. So Yahoo, like much of the internet, was very far ahead of its time, really pioneering a lot of things that we've actually come around full circle to, and design systems was actually one of them. So 2006, that's pre-iPhone. Time goes by. We have this concept of atomic design, which actually only came out in 2013. So who's familiar with the concept of atomic design? Great. Who actually thinks it works? Yeah, it really doesn't. As much as I love bread frost, it does not work. So, you know, this idea that you break all of you break down all of the pieces and parts of a digital experience to its smallest component parts, then you build it back up, and you argue about what's an atom and what's a molecule and what's an organism, which is not related to a molecule or an atom, and then all of a sudden that becomes a template, and then there's pages, and is a page a template? How is page not a template? How does it all work? It drives me totally insane, but it did help kind of create this initial foundation for what would become the large-scale adoption of design systems. But then we get Google Material Design, which came out in 2014, and Google Material Design was less about this idea of components and a design system that had things you could drag and drop, and more about this idea of a design language system, and represented by these three sort of abstract concepts. The first being that material is the metaphor. That's very poetic, but it basically meant that Google was going back to this idea of kind of flat design and things that were grounded in tactile objects, paper, the levels of things. You had a move kind of coming up before this of that whole skeuomorphic design, and then we went into pure flat design. And material design was kind of like the codification of those concepts. The second element was this idea of bold, graphical, intentional, very much motivated or inspired by print design. So print design, obviously there's a big kind of schism in the design world where a bunch of print designers who moved into moved into digital and then kind of didn't understand how to use the paradigm, moved back into print design, and then digital designers came up and then they argue with each other. So Google Material Design was kind of this return to graphic design as a model in digital design. And the last piece of it was motion design. So really trying to codify what are the rules for how things move, because the beautiful thing about digital design is that it is actually interactive. It is not a flat object. So things have to move, things have to have intentionality with how you interact with them, how they interact with each other. So that's your whole history lesson. This basically has led us to a world where everybody has a design system. Adobe, Apple, Google, Shopify, the US government, the UK government, Uber. Insert everybody here. Everybody has a design system. And they've designed these design systems to be for their internal products. So now we're going to go back to the world of Drupal. Why are we here? So we saw this brief, as many people did, for the design system and implementation, or design and implementation of a design system for Experience Builder for Drupal CMS. And we were super excited because for those of you who have been familiar with Media Current in our history of Drupal things, we were kind of like at the forefront of component-based design, component-based development, and design systems. So seeing that there's an opportunity for us to work on Drupal CMS and with Experience Builder and create a design system that we're hoping many, many people would use, we had to throw our hats in the ring. But it is a very complicated ask. So, who in this room has ever used a low-code or no-code site building product? Yes, okay. So when we started working on designing this design system, we, of course, as everybody who's been working on all of these different Drupal CMS and Experience Builder tracks, had to go and look at the low-code, no-code market because it has been a present and evolving and largely growing market share part of technology. So we have to figure out, how are these people doing things? What are they doing? So we looked at a lot of things, but spent a lot of time looking at Webflow, Wix, Squarespace, and Framer. Those are the four that we kind of really believe that they had the strongest, most accessible end user experience. We wanted to look at how they create design systems or concept of design systems and how people interact with them. And what we learned. So I love Webflow personally. Webflow is great if you are comfortable with HTML, CSS, you have the idea that JavaScript exists, you can do a lot of stuff with it. It does have a harder, steeper learning curve and barrier to entry, which then we go to its kind of polar opposite, Wix, which in my opinion is not the joke that it was in the past, because they made a couple strategic acquisitions and they have a pretty progressive interaction animation product. Squarespace, we all know Squarespace. We all know a website from 1,000 yards that was built on Squarespace. But that's really the gold standard of how do you create a website. How do you create a website builder that theoretically your grandparents could use? And they could make something that actually works, that you take it out of the box and it actually works. It also looks like a Squarespace site, but it does actually work. And last sort of to the market in wider adoption is Framer. I recommend not bringing up Framer in conversation with designers unless you have many hours to spend discussing Framer, but it does have this interesting, it's a website building product that is clearly designed for designers in the same way that Figma sort of designed for designers. So we looked at this world of site builders and their built-in design systems, and the thing that we kind of came around to when you look at that market is that those products don't really have design systems. They have their design system, like Squarespace looks like Squarespace, Webflow looks like Webflow, Framer looks like Framer, but they don't have a design system. They have kind of these vanilla pieces and parts that you can put on a page and you can make them look like something, and sometimes they look very much like that product, and sometimes you can make them look like something completely different, but it's not really a design system. So we had to have all these existential conversations that I'm sure folks who worked in the design system space have had time and time again, which is, what is a component? And I cannot tell you what a component is. We spend hours of time.
Everything's a component.
Looking at all of these. So here we've got all of our green Post-its or stickies. These are all the ones that we were pretty confident were components. Yellow were things that we think maybe are components. Red were things that they're probably not components. But we have to decide what is a component and what are we designing and what are we building. What has the most versatility? What is used in the most cases? How do you create something that has endless uses, but also is narrow enough that you can actually build it? Because you can't have this infinite spin of what is a component, which led us to this conversation of how do you create a set of components? How do you create this design system? How do you do any of these things without really thinking about all the possible use cases that this end product can be used for? How do we create all of the building blocks if we don't know what house we're building? Or how are we going to type every word that we know? So we started thinking about how can we get to a place where we understand what are all of the possible use cases for what Drupal CMS and Experience Builder can be used for in the future. That led us to this concept of theme personalities. Now, we've all gone on these low-code, no-code site builder products. We've all been in the Webflow or the WordPress theme marketplace, and you see that you've got these kind of themes that have a certain look and feel. You can go and you can get your SaaS theme, you can get your portfolio theme, you can get your startup theme, you can get your blog theme, you can get all these themes. And we looked at how those themes express themselves, how they feel in design, how they feel in UI, in UX, and what components they actually need to power them, which led us to the creation of 4, there were more, but we cut them down, 4 key themes. First, we have this idea of a SaaS website. So what does every SaaS website look like? You kind of have that hero with the, we're going to tell you how your life is going to be changed by this product, and then a lot of pictures of this product. What we wanted to do was kind of identify what are these key pieces that we can start using in all of these themes. So how do we create this kind of logo quilt that we see on every single website? How do we create these different cards that can be used to express the features of a product, or they can be used to express there's a blog here? How do we create a component that can convey testimonials? And how do we keep reusing these components across very different use cases and very different themes, but you see that they start to show up in the same way? So how do we take the same block, reskin it, put different content in it, arrange it in a different sort of arrangement, and how does it feel very different? Because if we can identify those pieces that are evergreen, that are agnostic, that are incredibly reusable, we can use that as our foundation. So we have our portfolio theme, we have our education theme, and you can see here, even though I'm going through this pretty quickly, you can see here that they're all kind of, you're seeing the same pieces and parts, but they are all different. They all look different. They all feel different. They're all saying different things. And the last one. So we went through this entire exercise to figure out, how do we have the whole landscape of all of the components that we're going to need to build. And then we had them all sort of designed, maximally expressed, lots of discussions about typography and colors and imagery, and a lot of, if you actually look at some of the copy, a lot of really good jokes. And then we had to go all the way kind of back to the beginning, because we're not going to build 500 different themes. All of us in this room probably will eventually, but we're not going to release 500 different themes on day one. We have to go all the way back through this entire journey of figuring out what are all the use cases to come back to what are the basic Legos that you have in the box. What are the things that are infinitely reusable, infinitely reskinnable, infinitely versatile, and how can we take those things, build the best version of those, design them in the best possible way, and then release them to everybody to build on top of. You want to talk about that, Brian?
No. Yes. All right. All right, cool. Interesting enough, too, I think, who here went to Dree's note this morning? Yeah. So there were some new things in there that we hadn't heard before, but I think they were kind of cool to hear. I mean, they're obviously a little bit more future forward, but I don't think anything that we've already embarked on kind of deviates from that. I think actually it kind of made us feel kind of like we made some good calls. Of course, totally open to hearing from you folks about that. And I'm going to get into a little bit of the technical side of this side, this thing for devs and for site owners, content creators, and that kind of thing. But I do want to go back to one thought that the star shot that really hits home for me personally. I've been working with Drupal for a long time. I have a design background first. The fact that I'm a developer at all, I owe to Drupal. So to me, Starshot really means a lot. It means to me is, can we show the whole world how awesome Drupal really is, right? What are the barriers that we need to take down for people to see that? And there are definitely some barriers. So let's talk about, we've talked about that a lot. I'd love to hear more either from you now or even in question time or after of some of these things, because they're not just theme level issues, but this is what kind of hit home to me.
With that. Where are you planning on putting a window?
Window? There's no window.
No window. What about the hatch?
The hatch.
Yeah, the hatch. We need a hatch with explosive bolts that we can open ourselves.
I think there is something you do not understand. This is the final form of the capsule. No hatch.
What would happen if the automatic controls went out?
Backups, checks, etc. This would not happen.
I said, what would happen if it did?
Pilot would have to fly it back.
This is the way it is.
You know, I wonder how the press is going to feel about this.
What does the press have to say about this?
Yeah, what do they have to say about it?
Well, do you boys know what makes this bird go up? Funding makes this bird go up.
That's right. No Bucks. No Buck Rogers. And, press over there.
Hey, over here!
They all want to see Buck Rogers.
And that's us. Buck Rogers.
You see, those fellas over there, they've been making us out as the 7 finest and bravest pilots in all America. And if a story were to come out in the press that we were not being allowed to fly as pilots...
We want a window. Yeah, there could maybe be, in future capsules, be a window, here.
No, that's where the hatch with explosive bolts goes.
The hatch with the explosive... Yeah, there could be a hatch with explosive bolts on the capsule.
That is a spacecraft, sir. We do not refer to it as a capsule. Spacecraft.
Yeah. A hatch with explosive bolts on the spacecraft. There. And there will be pitch and yaw thrusters, which will enable the astronaut occupant
The
to...
pilot. Astronaut, pilot.
Yeah, the astronaut pilot. To have control of the re-entry procedures.
Thank you. We appreciate it. You wouldn't mind if we had the press over here take a few photos of us by our spacecraft now, would you?
Good idea, John. He wants to go in there now. Look, Glenn's waving us in. Hey, what's your problem?
All right, sorry. That clip probably dates me a little bit, but I kind of stumbled upon it because the idea of Starshot and how this is kind of, the space theme that Therese has brought into this, and just that, in my mind, maybe the metaphor is not obvious, but right, the devs are kind of the scientists, and not that, it's kind of an extreme, right? We're not quite that hardcore, but really, Drupal feels a little bit like that sometimes. And the end users, the content creators, the site owners are the astronauts there. And at the end of the day, we're talking about user experience and demanding the right stuff. And so I think that's something that is clear about Starshot, and I think what we're trying to do with this theme is kind of get there. But if you go to Drupal.org right now, you can download Drupal CMS, or you can play with it, and it was great to see the GitHub where you can actually download and get Drupal CMS running locally, because that I think is a huge pain point too for being able to try it out. But really, at the end of the day, we still need to give clients, customers, that library of modern intuitive themes and all the other tools too, right? Not just the theme, but all the other Drupal things that we have to spend a lot of time, that they have to spend money on developers configuring and fixing, or we all know if you're a Drupal developer, you know that every project there's some configuration you have to kind of do, and Drupal CMS is trying to get away from that as much as possible. I think there's still some gaps, but a major gap there I think is definitely the theme, the design system idea, and just not having one. There's also a couple other things. I could probably make a longer list of pain points for me. I'd love to hear maybe afterwards from some of you what kind of you think we're missing sometimes. These aren't really theme things. Every Drupal site ever built never had a good 403, 404 page. It was always the nav, and then the footer would snap up all the way to the bottom of the nav bar, and that was always just kind of a deal breaker for me. So sticky footer by default. A nice design of a user page. These are all things that the competitors have out of the box day one. And I think these are the things that, on top of the design system, we have to address. And so what is the requirements for this? We have a target audience, right? It's not us developers anymore, really. It's site owners, content creators, site builders, designers, people who, I'm not saying they're not technical, but they're not, back-end developers or full-stack developers. We want to not only cater to them, we want to empower them, and obviously Experience Builder is a huge part of that, but I'm sure there's other areas that we can do to empower them. We want to give them modern tooling that they would get with other things, or maybe even exceed it, so we're building in Storybook. We're doing this so you don't have to know React to get it running. It'll work natively with SDC and YAML. Oh, and then also offer a whole range of different designs for this design system. So I think there are a lot of requirements here, and we can certainly do it, and I think we're trying to set the stage so that the entire community contribute as well. Oh yeah, and don't make developers cringe. So, I don't know. Let me know how we do. So what's the tech stack look like? So we start with Figma. We have a Figma template, both what do you call it, a library? Yeah, like a library file that's more of a vanilla version of it, so that if you're starting off with if you want to build a theme for Drupal and have it work with, I think what Dries called it site templates, or the marketplace that he introduced today, that you have a starting point in Figma for that. That way the idea is that if we're all building similar types of components, then we can really collaborate truly, and we're not all having one version of a card and another version, and they're not even close together. I think it's really important that there's some cohesiveness to that. We have Storybook. We're using Vite instead of Webpack to drive it, and then we're using Tailwind for the CSS side of things, and then of course Drupal and Experience Builder. Why Tailwind? Anyone here worked with Tailwind? Anyone here like Tailwind? Okay, I'll show myself out. Okay, so one of the first reasons that we decided to go with Tailwind is really the last one there, is that they've already have it baked into Experience Builder, and so we didn't want to just go our own way right away. But there are some really good reasons to use Tailwind. First of all, it is hugely adopted, right or wrong. It's very customizable. In fact, with Tailwind 4, that becomes so much easier. As someone who doesn't love to get into JavaScript to update variables that much, that wouldn't be my first choice. Tailwind 4 is really a game changer there. You have the just-in-time optimization, and then it's just in general faster to do development. And I think part of that, though, is setting it up right. And we're not suggesting that we use utility classes everywhere. So we have a prototype theme called Mercury. It's kind of inspired both by the Starshot idea and just the fact that this is kind of that first entry into this stage. And so it's built with SDC, so all of our components are in that components folder. And we think that's really a smart choice because then if someone really is a developer and they want to be able to add their own components, they're not looking for some other folder, some source folder or whatever. We want to do it the Drupal way as much as possible. That way, hopefully, too, anyone else doing things, I know I just did a session for a UI, one of the UI modules, and that's the way they do it. And we want to make sure that we're doing it so that the entire community can embrace it and adopt it. That's really the key here from the development side is we want to do it so everyone adopts it, not just do it the way we want to do it. We have an opinion, but still we're trying to be smart about it. And then, of course, we have YAML and Twig files. And so just real quick, YAML, I think if you work with SDC at all, it's pretty straightforward schema kind of stuff. But in Twig, what we're proposing is we don't want to put all of the utility classes from Tailwind in there. We just want to put the ones that drive logic. And so things that will change based on a control and experience builder or in Storybook, that's what we want to really spend most of our time in Twig for. Also because we don't want to ask a designer or a site builder to go into Twig unless they have to. Because how many of you who are not a developer are comfortable in Twig? Right? So, Twig is great, but you can really get yourself lost in it really fast. And of course, you have to clear the cache at the end too. So we're proposing, we really do a little bit of that in here, but we always have this one, you see at the very top there, there's a one class in the class right there, heading. And so what we're doing is we're using that, I'll skip ahead for 1 second here, and that's going to be in our CSS file. So if you put that reference up at the top, that tells the CSS file and Tailwind, it makes all of the directives available. And so we can use apply to chain a lot of the utility classes that we don't really want to put into Twig. We can put them right there. It makes it a little bit more consistent. It's easier for people who aren't really into Twig to find. And I think that's really going to be something that makes a lot of sense in the long, hopefully. But of course, we want to get feedback and so forth on that as well, because I'm sure there's going to be some things that really do better in Twig than others that we haven't really discovered yet. So go back here. And Tailwind is also very customizable. And so with the main CSS file, that's where all of your variables live. So it's pretty easy for a designer, a site builder to go right in there. And we've created some default color variables, but they can add their own. They can modify these. There's even ones for typography, spacing, all that kind of thing. And those are really easy to modify right there, and they just work. We don't have any Sass. We're just using Tailwind's runtime or in-time compilation. So this is really, we're hoping this is a really good place that if you pull down this theme, you can go and go, well, my brand colors are this, and you can just go right in there. You see you have a brand variable, you have an accent color variable, you have more grays, that kind of a thing, and it should be pretty intuitive, hopefully, for you to change the colors of the theme to match your brand. And do we have time for a demo, or 440? When are we at, 450? Demo? Okay. Okay. All right. Oh, by the way, this is an AI-generated image. It's pretty cool. It's kind of scary, actually. Two lines in the prompt, because I only use ChatGPT for free, and I only generate 1 image a day. There you go. Anyway. All right. So we're using PMPM to run Storybook, and we got to change out the browser here. Technical support, help. Thank you, Elliot. Okay. All right, so This is, I'm just running Storybook here right in my terminal, and we just look at the code base here too. So we've got our code base, and this is still in progress, but we can see in the components folder, we have all these different components that are already kind of set up. And they're all in, some are really simple, and some are a little more complicated. But if you're a site builder, designer, we'll obviously have some really clear instructions. But all you need to do really is run a couple commands, and then you should be able to run Storybook. There you go. Okay. And I'd also like to note, too, is we've done storybooks like this for lots of clients, and not every client ever ends up using them, too. But I think it's really a great thing for the community to try to embrace, just so we kind of have that ability in every theme. But we can kind of see that we have, these aren't atoms, we're just calling them base elements. Buttons, block quote. We have more things like more of a CTA, which is a banner, like that, with buttons. And then this isn't, groundbreaking storybook stuff, but still, this is all SDC. And so it's all more native, and hopefully this makes it a lot easier for site builders, designers, and them to work with. You even have some controls over here for, changing the background out, and then all of these different elements should automatically change, kind of based on whatever settings you pick. And these would be the same types of controls you would have in Experience Builder. So that's the idea, that whatever we put in Storybook has to exist in Experience Builder. We have a number of different heroes, and those are always very popular, right? We have kind of the overlay version. We have more of the side-by-side, and we can obviously switch that out to light and dark. So all these colors are really, this is just the brand color, right? So if your brand color is blue, this would be blue, and the type would end up being white or whatever color makes sense. This is that brand quilt, and this one's going to be built with the idea that it's responsive, and then it goes into over a horizontal scroller on mobile or 768, some of that, But these are the kind of things that we're going to bake into everything, all of the things we're working on now, and also have more of a vanilla version of all of them, or of one, that's more of a starter kit. And then, of course, we have more of an assembled version. And I think the challenge that we find is just really making sure that whatever we would normally do in Storybook will translate over to Experience Builder when that's done.
Is this repo publicly available?
Not yet. Yeah. Go ahead.
When you ran the run Storybook, it seemed to be using a program called Storybook Generator in order to generate the JSON stories.
Yes.
Can you talk more about that?
I can talk maybe a little bit less technical about it, but we basically have a plugin that runs with a custom plugin that converts the YAML file into a story for you every time you save.
Plugin exists on the Storybook side or on the Drupal side?
In the Storybook side. Right, because then, go ahead.
You wrote that yourself?
I did not, but someone on my team did, yes. Yeah, we have a couple of those kind of custom loaders in there. We have one for Twing. We have one also to adjust the path to images because it's not the same in SDs. We wanted to make sure that if you're in a Storybook, your images go into a static folder, but we wanted to make sure we store all the images inside the SDC folder because that's the way Experience Builder recognizes it. So we're trying to kind of keep things as Drupal as possible and do a couple little extra custom things inside Vite to, take that burden away from anybody having to do it. So we have a team of amazing people doing that. So, go ahead.
From the Experience Builder talk just before this, there was talk of the Figma file, the Storybook, and then how it implements. So the intention is ultimately to have everything that's built in Figma be built here and then available in the Experience Builder.
Exactly. Yeah, the idea that, and we talked a little before about tokens, and yeah, we'll see. Yeah, someday, right? Yeah, right, for sure. And I think too, along the way is, some people I can imagine they don't care about Storybook, right? That is a little bit more of a dev centering thing. But I think if we build that that system right, it's available for those who care about it, or maybe they don't care about it on day one, but the hope, right, is with Drupal CMS is they build something simple and then they don't go somewhere else for something complex. They can build on Drupal CMS. To me, that's where we really want to be. Go ahead. These are a work in progress, kind of alongside experience. We haven't really gotten too much of an experience builder yet because experience builder is still in progress too. So we're going to track Lori down today or tomorrow and talk about that too. Yeah. Yes, that's definitely where we're aiming for. And I think it comes down to how many themes we can have in that state by then, right? Is it going to be, I think we're trying to do 2 or 3. Could we do more? I don't know. I don't think we want to do less because we want to have options, right? I mean, that really came clear to me when we were at the Note, right? I mean, this idea of the marketplace, we talked a little bit about it too, but I mean, that became clear and it makes a lot of sense, right? So we'd like to have more than one right out of the box kind of a thing, but hopefully we can even open it up a little bit further down the road here before Vienna to get some contribution too. We'll have to see. Yeah.
Do you have a sense yet of what Experience Builder will provide in terms of like font selection options, and how did that impact how you thought about typography for this initiative?
Oh, great question. Yeah. Actually, I don't think part of there's kind of 2 pieces of that I'm aware of at least. There is, we're not sure exactly when in the process of spinning up Drupal CMS that you get to pick the theme, right? Like we're not sure if it feels to me like it should be before recipes because you may have specific recipes that work with certain themes and, but I think that's a little bit to be determined. So we've thought a little bit about having some kind of control panel or something like that when you're installing the theme, or just go to the appearance page, right, and you can pick some of those. I think that's a little bit more engineering that maybe we want to have. And so right now what we're doing is we're loading that in the main CSS file. So, which is another area where, is this going to change? Okay, good. Where's my VS Code? Here. That's another reason I think that we really feel good about our idea that all of those main kind of site-wide variables are in this one file. And that's kind of the way Tailwind natively works. And it's pretty easy. We can just add that import string right here. As long as you do it before the main Tailwind import, it seems to work really well. And then I think we actually do have another custom something running in the background. I think we just did that last week in an emergency scenario for Experience Builder. So we do have it working there too, but I don't remember exactly what the steps were involved with that. But yeah, so hopefully, my sense is in CSS it's great, but I mean, if we can get it, I think in Drupal, the Drupal UI, that would be kind of a cool thing too, right? Because we're not always picking Google fonts, right?
We'll say that we did. You push the button. I gotta press the button. Okay, we did, for at least this work, structure the design and some of the artistic choices, I would say, around how Tailwind works, and how and everything was a Google font. So we really wanted to, because designers can go for days and spin and choose colors and different typefaces, but we really wanted to say, okay, here's the guide rail, here's the guide rails that we're working within, here's the structure that we're working within. If you only have this amount of colors, if you can only choose from this selection of typefaces, if you can only work within these constraints, how can you make that still look versatile? And I think that was really helpful because that's how everybody actually works. Like, we're not every day sitting down even on the brand side and going, oh, let me do this really wild expressive thing with my design system or my library. Like, you have the tools that you have and you have to work within that. So it really, when you're creating that, makes you realize how, A, those choices are important, and B, how much content really makes a website. Like, you can have the best design in the world, but if you have bad content, then it's going to be bad. And we really need to focus on that idea that, like, you can only do so much, you can only put so much lipstick on things, but the idea that, like, we wanted it to be simple, we wanted it to be opinionated, but we also needed it to be flexible, which is a lot of things that are complicated to do all at the same time.
Yeah, I think we're also still working on the flexible part. Like we'll make it flexible, but then at some point we have to kind of go, okay, it's flexible enough for this stage, and then we can kind of get a little bit further down the road and reevaluate. And some of those things might be a great space for contrib, right? To have some type of font load, or if fonts from an external source like Adobe or whatever. I think there might even be some contrib out there right now that lets you load those fonts, you know. So I think we definitely need to cross that bridge a little bit, you know. But I think right now it's more the simple side, you know, keeping in mind our audience. We have to kind of keep driving back to that. Yeah, back in the black vest. Yeah.
So, great work, by the way. So,
thanks.
Kudos for tackling this. My only thought, I'm curious what you guys thought of this. So, the technical debt that comes with Tailwind, and you'd asked the question earlier, who's a favorite? And I'm not because of that. I'm also because maybe it's why, maybe I'm just stuck in my way. You're moving away from like having pure CSS and even with Tailwind support onto that. Like even using like the add apply. The creator of Tailwind even said you only added that to trick people into not adding class lists. And nobody should really be using it, but it's like see it everywhere when it's being
Right.
used. So to me, it's the barrier of entry that you mentioned earlier. It's raised because now you have to understand everything that comes with Tailwind. You have to look through the documentation. So
Right.
or just if you have a concern going our it's just like, hey, experience builders going with us, so we're going to stay with them.
Yeah, I think for us it came down to this, and I want to hear your thoughts on this, but I'm going to talk first. We're not actually building this for developers. So the end user doesn't care. Like it should be performant, but they don't care. And they want it to be flexible, they want it to look good, they want it to work the way they want it to work. But if you told them that it was like powered by lead balloons, they would not care. So we have to kind of get over it and make choices and stick with them. And then when we can change our minds, but we kind of have to get to V1. And then if we have to rip it out and put in lead balloons, cool. You want to take that?
Deal with it. No, I hear you. We had some really heated debates internally that Elliot may not have been for some of them.
No, because I was just saying make a decision.
There are some of us on the team who were purists like that, right? I think there's a room for that, and that may change down, right? Like I think our choice was, do you put all the utility classes into Twig? That's what you would do if you're using Tailwind, right? The Tailwind way, and then make all these people who don't know Twig deal with it. Or do you find a way to put them into the CSS file where they actually kind of belong, a lot of them, you know? Like Bootstrap's, I mean, we're just doing another version of Bootstrap then if we're doing utility classes everywhere, right? Which I hate Bootstrap. And I don't love Tailwind either. There are some really great things about Wrap being able to do things fast, though. I will say that. When you get your mind right about Tailwind, how it works, and really understand all the utility classes, it does some really, really smart, modern things. And it makes it easy to be consistent. Yeah. And I think also too, getting rid of other dependencies like Sass, things we want to move to, right? And we even thought, well, if you really don't like Tailwind, because some people, we have developers on our staff who really miss Sass if we don't have it, right? You can delete what's in the CSS file and write your own. That's kind of where we're trying to be flexible. Like if you want to do this yourself, we're just putting it, but we're putting it in the Drupal way. We're sticking with the structure of Drupal, so you're kind of forced to live there. But if you want to customize it more to your needs, or you have developers who can, I don't think we're trying not to take that away either. But it's definitely a balance. Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah. No? Yeah, you. Yeah. Absolutely. I think, in fact, it's funny because sitting at the Dries note going, oh, what's a site template, Dries? That's my first time hearing that. Or heard the marketplace a little bit, but what is a site template versus a design system too? There's a little bit of a fuzziness in my mind for that. And then I went to a session this morning about another design system thing too. So there's a lot of competing ideas around routes towards the design system, and I'm not sure how many of those are more of a core thing versus a CMS thing. I think we're going to get to that point where we have to decide what particular path is for core versus CMS. I feel like we're there a little bit right now. But I think we want to get this in the next couple months out to the point where we feel comfortable that getting contrib and getting more feedback that we're ready for that. So we definitely want to get that sometime this summer. So I was saying, would that be second quarter?
Yeah.
We want to try to do it before Vienna, but we also, there's a lot of work to do. We're kind of at the first third, right? And so we don't want to put it out there before it's really ready to really get people's hands on it too. So. But actually, if afterwards, just give me your name too. We can talk about it too, and kind of, anyone who wants to contribute or just talk more, we would love to talk further about it. So, for sure. Yeah.
Another thing to pile on is the presentation Lori just gave of code is yet release, allowing people to export the components they have created through the UI into something. And the idea would be that they would export those components into a storybook. And I think I know the answer to my question, but have you looked at that? Have you talked to Lori about that? Have you seen what that workflow is at?
We talked to Lori, but I think they're moving really fast, right? Trying to the amount of what they're doing is amazing, but it's complex. And so I think we've been kind of working a little bit in parallel on the design, the Figma, and the storybook and theming side of things, so that which I think pretty soon they're going to be ready to have us really merge the two more and really kind of see where things work, where they don't. I think we've made some good architectural decisions, but there'll certainly be refinements based on that when they really, we've worked with Experience Builder quite a bit internally, but it breaks. It's pretty fragile right now, to be expected, right? So we haven't been able to kind of really, foolproof things yet. We're still kind of in the stage of we're in the same space as you are. Like, okay, when can we do this? When can we do that? And yeah, the config part I have no idea about. So, yeah. Anything else? No. Going?
All right. We're good.
Cool. Thank you very much. Oh,
feel free to come
or come
chat with
yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Just to ask if you guys are in the contrib room, specifically with the table or anything.
We are not.
No.
We maybe could be.
Maybe we could.
Yeah.
We'll talk about it.
Yeah, we can connect. Yeah, again, we're still pretty early, so while this looks like we're being authoritative about it, I think we're really looking to get buy-in a little bit and get other people's ideas too, because we want to make this, the key here is adoption. We want everybody to want to use it. We don't want to have certain people who don't want to use it, other people do, so.
What seems a little ambiguous in this discussion is adoption level, because
Good question.
right? Like a lot of what we're talking about here seems to be about how developers will interact with this. But at the end of the day, isn't your charge to produce an initial starter kit of stuff that your average non-developer or its stated marketers can deploy, who have never heard of Tailwind, you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
be able to, you know what I mean? Lots of folks use Squarespace. They're not asking questions about how the CSS is configured
Right.
behind the scenes.
Yeah.
So at what point is your charge just to get something that creates a product that can get launched?
That is our charge.
Yeah.
But we're also at DrupalCon, so
Yeah.
we're going to get Drupal questions. But I think that's an important, I think we're at this interesting inflection point in the world of Drupal, and that is realizing that there are two sides to the mirror, and that we have to be building things intentionally for end users who will choose something else if they don't have this. And they are choosing that. So here we have this opportunity to make a thing that works well, intuitively, and is, enterprise grade, but is chosen by people who, if you told them what Tailwind was, they would think it was a part of a car. And they should. I don't want to know as much as I know about it. But it is like we have to keep that in mind. We are not building this design system for developers. We're building it for people who want to make a website. Full
and they
stop.
want to do it fast.
Yeah, and they want it to look
They
good.
want to get out the door. Yeah, and
lot
I
of
think
thoughts
we're
about that.
trying to be flexible. Like as a developer myself, I don't want to have the entire community not want to use it, right? I mean, that would be kind of silly, right? But I think the stated purpose is non-developers, site builders, designers, and hopefully by giving them some good readmes too into like how to edit the main CSS file and change your colors out, that kind of thing, or maybe even in some kind of a control panel in the UI. I think those are really pieces that are critical too to make that successful, for sure. All right, thanks a lot.